Hey everyone, my name is Vince Gellman. Thank you so much for joining me today. I don't know if you heard this or read this, but recently California has signed into law Senate Bill 107, which essentially turns it into a sanctuary state for kids seeking gender affirming care. And boy, do I need to put big quotations around gender affirming care, which I'm going to get into further in this video. And please remember the word affirm, because that really is the theme of this video. So kids who live in states that have outlawed certain procedures for kids wanting to transition to become transgender, procedures such as puberty blockers, hormone treatments, and those very barbaric, mutilating surgeries. If kids live in those states, they can go to the sanctuary state of California effective January 1st, 2023 because of this bill. And they are essentially protected under the jurisdiction of California. They are buffered from any legal consequences that would occur in their own state. And congratulations to these different states that are passing laws against this very inhumane treatment of children, this dehumanizing treatment of children. So in this video, I'm going to go further into this, and I'm going to talk about the real affirmation that kids need, which actually begins at home. So instead of talking about that here, let us continue our conversation in the warm confines of my home. I'll see you there. So this is part of a larger topic I addressed a couple of videos ago that's called How and Why They Are Coming After Our Kids. Now, I want to make clear right away that I don't have, and I said this in the other video, I have no issue with a mature, informed adult becoming transgender. I'm not transphobic. What I do have an issue with, and it is my business, and I think it needs to be all of our business, is when children are being intentionally manipulated and groomed in order to become transgender, which is part, as I talk about in that video, which is part of a larger plan towards transhumanism. Transgenderism is a stepping stone towards transhumanism, towards AI integration. So those politicians, those in political power, those in positions of authority who say, we are doing this because we care about trans rights, we care about values of inclusion and openness, those who are saying that are lying, or they're being very manipulated by higher forces and they're puppets to them, and they don't realize how much they are being controlled to parrot a narrative. A narrative that comes across as caring about these liberal values and the well-being of children, but really have nothing to do with that. This is not about these trans rights. This is not about inclusion, diversity, and openness. This is about manipulation and control. It's about transhumanism. It's about confusing people with their identity, in their identity, confusing them so much so that they're quite willing to look for an alternative, artificial identity. One that involves implants, one that involves being plugged into a larger artificial digital network. That's why we have all these 5G towers going up, all these satellites going up to help run that network, to control us, to surveil us. This is all part of a larger plan. So this is not nothing. Gender affirming care. Care is not the right word. It's got nothing to do with caring. So this is what I care about. This is why this is an issue for me, is I care about kids. But people are being so utterly manipulated and deceived by these inverted, perverted stories. So I encourage you to check out that video, how and why they're coming after kids. I want to bring in some different context today. And the context I really want to focus on is, what is the real affirmation that kids need who are stressed and confused and uncertain about who they are and uncertain about their place in life and not feeling safe in the world, not having a sense of direction, not feeling a sense of belonging? What do those kids really need around affirmation? Well, let me get to the heart of it. The affirmation ultimately does not need to come, should not come from a doctor or surgeon or psychiatrist or therapist or big pharma that makes big money off of these interventions, these hormone blockers, these hormone treatments, these puberty blockers, these medical interventions that are part of the transition. The affirmation shouldn't be coming from them, because that's where it's currently coming from. And yes, it's also coming from parents as well, who are saying, yeah, I support you, 5-year-old, to transition. No, the affirmation needs to come from a parent who demonstrates to the child that they are loved and they're beautiful and they're whole and they're complete as they are now. So the affirmation could be something like this: Johnny, son, you are beautiful. Nothing is missing in you. And I love you just as you are now. Just as you are now. I love you just as you are now. Cindy, daughter, beautiful girl, I love you as you are now. Let me ask you a question. How many people going back in history, how many kids going back in history received that message from their parents? It doesn't have to be in those exact words. It can even be a feeling they get from their parents. They feel that they exist in the heart and mind of their parents. They know they're loved as they are. Even if the parent doesn't say the perfect words, they just know they're loved. How many children have felt that love, felt that reassurance, known in the heart that they're perfect just the way they are? How many kids going back in history have felt that? So children, the affirmation that they need now needs to come from mature, loving, street smart parents who are dialed into what's going on. But even if they don't know what's going on in terms of the larger dark picture, forget street smart, they just need loving, caring parents who communicate to them in different ways, through touch, through play, through a warm smile, and through safe, kind eyes, through gentle words, through firm words, that you are loved now, you are perfect now, you are whole, you are holy, you are wonderful now, and nothing's missing in you now. Affirm, it's got the word firm in it, so that needs to be made firm in the consciousness of the child. That is a sacred, very sacred, and very important role right now. It has been in history, but boy, is that needed now. But the thing is that parents are stressed, they're busy, they're dysregulated, they have their own trauma wounds, they have their own attachment wounds, they're being programmed by the mainstream left media, they're disconnected from their partner, they don't have the communication skills. And so there's so many kids who just are not being seen and heard and validated. They need parents that will play with them. How many kids have parents that really get down on their knees and play with them? That in itself is a validation of their own world. So another way of saying this is that children need to feel a secure bond or a secure attachment with at least one primary caregiver, one parent. They need to feel a secure attachment. Now I'm going back to attachment theory again. They need to feel connected. They need to feel connected. Remember, and I've said this so many times, that if children have to choose between attachment and authenticity, they generally choose attachment because they are so dependent on the relationship for their survival. They need to feel mommy and daddy love them. They need to feel safe with mommy and daddy. They need to feel like they belong in their hearts and their minds. So they sacrifice authenticity, who they naturally are, if who they naturally are is a threat to the attachment. So in other words, an insecure attachment begins to create an insecure identity, because if it's not safe to be me, because it threatens attachment, then I must adapt. I must become someone else in order to get whatever kindness or care or love or safety or attention from my parents that I can get. I must be who they want me to be to get whatever semblance of attachment I can get, whether that's pleasing or smart or tough or withdrawn. Whatever it needs to be, I must adapt. So if there's an insecure attachment, it creates an insecure identity, because once they start deviating from who they are as children, they're moving into an insecure, unstable, inauthentic identity. On the other hand, if children experience a secure attachment, what that does is that it fosters a secure identity. It's safe to be me. It's safe to enjoy me as I am. And therefore, it is safe to enjoy and be my gender. You see where I'm going with this? It's so important you understand that an insecure attachment fosters an insecure identity. And so what happens? What happens when a child has an insecure identity? Will they get confused? Obviously. And what might start happening is they get what we call gender dysphoria. Back in the day, 30 years ago, that wouldn't have crossed kids' minds or parents' minds that children have gender dysphoria. But it's in the collective field now. Kids are talking about it. It's on TikTok. It's everywhere. Kids are being so groomed, so manipulated to consider that they are transgender. So when they have that insecure identity, they think that if they become transgender, that will create the security they're seeking. I will feel secure as a boy, even though I'm biologically a girl, and vice versa. They're seeking security. But how many children born and raised in a loving home where they're validated for who they are, loved for who they are, where there's a secure attachment, how many of those children are seeking to transition? It's something to wonder about. Again, most kids are not getting their attachment needs met. Let us remember that historically, children were raised within a community setting, a village setting, where the aunts and the uncles played their part, friends played their part, adult friends helped to raise, and certainly the elders were a key part. The elders were a vital part in the raising of the child. That is a sacred purpose for the elder. It is as much a gift to the kids as it is to the elder. That's when they get to give back. All the wisdom that they've accumulated in their lifetime, they give it to the little ones. That's their joy. Let's also remember, in many indigenous cultures, going back in time, kids were initiated. They were initiated. They were taken into the woods. They were taken into the bush. They were taken in by wise people, elders, and they were guided. They were helped to mature. They went through a rigorous initiation, a rite of passage, where they transitioned from boys to men, from girls to women, and then they could go back to their communities with this newfound elixir in their heart, and they can contribute more fully as an initiated person. That initiation is what matured them and further confirmed and secured that soulful sense of self. But with a lack of community involvement, a lack of elders, a lack of initiation, and such a heavy focus on mom and dad without the neighbors, do we really know our neighbors anymore? Kids are not getting their attachment needs met, and then they go to a school, they go to kindergarten, and it's a 30-to-1 or 40-to-1 ratio of students to teacher. I met a kindergarten teacher one time. She said she had 40 students in kindergarten. Now, what happens when a child who's not getting their attachment needs met at home, what happens when they go to school and they're not getting their attachment needs from the teacher? What happens then? Well, then they seek out peer attachment, and now immature minds are seeking to attach to other immature minds, which really creates further problems. The attachment begins at home. The attachment begins at home. But we don't understand that still yet. And an example of this is that we hear parents say, "Oh, he just wants attention." No. Your Johnny doesn't just want attention. Do you see the tone? Oh, he just wants attention. No, your son, your daughter wants connection. Because children are attachment driven to the point of sacrificing who they are for attachment. So the issue, as I see it, with this whole trans hysteria has its roots in an insecure identity that is in large part created by an insecure attachment with primary caregivers. The other thing I want to say is children, when they're traumatized, and there's so much dysfunction in our homes, there's so much domestic dysfunction, there's so much physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect. Children are feeling scared, shamed, and they're feeling overwhelmed in their body. They feel overwhelmed in their system. And what happens when a child they're feeling overwhelmed because they have all this emotion, this fear, this terror, this anxiety, this anger, and they're not prepared yet. They're not designed at a young age to self-regulate, to self-soothe. They have all this coming up in their body. And so what happens is that the body begins to feel like an unsafe place to be. It's not safe to be in my body because my body's very uncomfortable. My body's very uncomfortable because everything that I'm experiencing around me in this very unpredictable, unsafe home. It's not safe to be in my body. So what happens then if it's not safe to be in my body? Well, what if I change my body? What if I have a different body? What if I'm somebody else? If I change my body, maybe I'll feel better. And so this is a second reason, as I see it, why children seek to transition, to become transgender. It's a second reason. It's a coping response. It's a band-aid response. It is an attempt to make them feel safer in their body. I'm a highly trained healer. I have plenty of training in trauma resolution. I could go on and on and on. And I can tell you one of the hallmarks of a traumatized psychophysiology is a lack of safety in the body. And you might relate to that. I don't feel safe to be in my body. Why do you think people have such a hard time feeling? Why do you think people have a hard time dancing? Because you got to be in your body to dance. Dancing is one of the scariest things for people. It's not for little kids. But people need like 5 beers or 5 glasses of wine before they get on the dance floor. They're terrified to let go in their body. People are terrified of feeling. Because it's unsafe to be in the body for people who have trauma or quite a bit of trauma. And when it's not safe to be in the body, it's not safe to be in relationships, and it's not safe to be in the world. And it's one reason why people who are traumatized self-isolate. They isolate. That's their way of coping. That's a way of managing the overwhelm in their system to make sure they don't feel too much out in the world. So if I don't feel safe in this body, what if I change my body? Maybe I'll feel safer then. This is not necessarily a purely conscious choice in terms of why this is happening, obviously for kids, in terms of where their decision-making is coming from. But this is how I see it. This is where I see, this is one key reason why I see kids reaching towards transitioning to becoming transgender. This is part of a distortion of body identification. It is a huge distortion of body identification. This is part of our infantile consciousness on the planet where we identify so much with the body and we're so disconnected from the soul. I mean, look at the education system. How much do they really acknowledge the human spirit? How much is the human spirit acknowledged in homes? The very fact that the education system sees children as empty vessels needing to be filled versus infinite vessels of infinite love and joy and wisdom and gifts and capacity that is longing to be expressed. The very fact that the education sees kids as empty versus inherently full says how spiritually bereft education is. This is a very spiritually infantile world that we're living in that is so body identified. And so it is one of the ways to understand our materialistic consciousness. It is one way of understanding reductive materialism is I am my body. No, you're not your body. You're not even your name. We say, hey, I'm John. No, your name isn't John. Your body's name is John. The name of your body is John. Your name isn't John because in your previous life you were Sandy and you had a different body. In your life before that, you were Sam and you had a different body then. So how can you be your body and how can you be your name when it's changing through all these lifetimes? You're not your name. You're not your body. You're not the roles that you play, and you're not your story. You're not your name. You're not your body. You're not the roles you play, and you're not your story. When you die, you take none of that with you. But this reductive, materialistic consciousness that is so obsessed with body and body image is contributing to this trans hype, this need to, if only I mutilate my body, I will be happier. That to me is akin to saying, well, if only I just accumulate more things, have more stuff. It's materialism. It's identification with things versus that which cannot be quantified. Is identification with things that I can hold and count and versus the undefinable, the ungraspable, you, the Holy Spirit that is you. So what kids need is to realize, with the help of their loving parents, is that it's safe and enjoyable to be me now. To be me now. I want to remind you all, if we go back to attachment theory, I really want to emphasize a little bit more the importance of kids feeling safe in their body. When kids feel overwhelmed, when young children feel overwhelmed in their body, they do not have the capacity yet to self-soothe or self-regulate. So if a child is in an unsafe home and they feel scared, if they look into mommy or daddy's eyes and they see unsafe, scary eyes, because that's terrifying. A lot of people watching this can likely relate to looking at one of their parents in the eyes and feeling terrified. Just that alone can be traumatizing. So when children are raised in this environment and they feel unsafe in their body and unsafe in the environment, they feel unsafe in their body, and they start to feel overwhelmed, young kids don't have the capacity to self-regulate or self-soothe, to calm that storm of emotions down. Their brain isn't developed yet at a young age to do, it has not developed the capacity to do that. Children have very little capacity. Infants have very little capacity to self-regulate, other than sucking their thumb, for instance. What regulates a child's nervous system is what's called co-regulation. It's the relationship, also known as interactive regulation. It's, in other words, co-regulation is my calm engenders your calm. My calm engenders your calm. When children feel the calming presence of their parent, not only does that help to soothe them, but that helps them to develop the capacity to self-regulate. I want you to understand that. Co-regulation does not only help to calm children, but it helps their brain develop the capacity to self-regulate. So until that time, until that brain development has happened, the relationship is so important. And so that means parents need to be self-regulated. They need to be taking good care of themselves. And yes, they may even need to do some healing work in order to clear the trauma imprints in them and the programming imprints from their own life, from their past life that they've inherited from their ancestors. They need to clear those out so they can feel calm enough to help their children feel calm. And they may even need to seek support in terms of how they are with their partner, how their relationship is with their partner. Because of course, the parents set the tone for the home. So I'm going off a little bit here, but I want to also add, this is why I take issue with this such a focus in schools to teach children how to meditate. Teach children how to meditate, teach them skills on how to self-soothe. That to me is just, it is such a disregard for the importance and the responsibility of the relationship. Let's keep teaching children what they're inherently meant to do in relationship. We are such an individualized culture in this Western world. We've lost touch again with the indigenous cultures that are community relationally based. And now we have a school system with 30-to-1, 40-to-1 ratio of students to teacher. We have kids who are not getting their attachment needs at home, and now we're putting them in school, and they're being taught how to self-soothe, how to self-regulate. And I'm not saying there isn't benefit. I'm not saying there is no benefit to that, no benefit to teaching yoga in schools. I want to make that clear. but we're missing the core piece, which is the relationship. It's the relationship, everyone. That's why children, if they have to choose between authenticity and attachment, they choose attachment. That's how important relationship is. That's how important relationship is to securing identity, to nurturing their capacity to self-regulate, nurturing their capacity to feel safe in their body and therefore safe in the world. And so I circle back again to say that the solution to gender confusion, or what we call gender dysphoria, is in the relationship between parent and child. The solution is not to shove toxic pharmaceuticals in them. It's not to put them under the knife. How barbaric, how anti-human, how absolutely disrespectful that is to not just the body of the child, but the soul of the child. It is an absolute disgrace. It is an absolute disgrace. It is absolutely barbaric, abhorrent. It is disgusting. The solution is in the relationship. The solution lies in the responsibility between mommy and child, daddy and child. Them affirming to the child, you are beautiful, loving as you are now. You are wonderful as you are. Nothing is missing in you. You are complete now. I love you just the way you are. That is what the solution is, everyone. That's what's needed. Let us end this abuse. Let us end this abuse by taking responsibility, greater responsibility for our children, greater responsibility for our relationships, including with our spouse, greater responsibility for our own self-care, our own healing journey, and let us protect our children from these dark agendas that are seeking a very, very evil anti-human agenda. If you are interested in your own healing journey, I lead online healing and activation ceremonies pretty much every weekend. They're on Zoom, and I'm going to put a link in the description. And thank you for watching. Please share, please subscribe, please click like, notifications, all that jazz. Take good care, and thank you for listening and watching.